Are there any matters we need to address before we resume?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. As you had indicated before, you wanted us to record the times, and put on the record the times that we fast forwarded through the,
Yes, sir.
the video. So I did write those times down as we did it. So just for the record, I'll indicate them here. The tape started at 10:40 p.m. on January the 15th of 2013. We then fast forwarded from that time to 11:19 p.m. And then we fast forwarded, slowed it down, saw a section, then fast forward from the times of 11:24 p.m. to 11:50 p.m. on that date, then slowed down and watched a section before the jury. The next fast forward time is now going to be at 12:30 a.m. on January the 16th of 2013, from 12:30 a.m. to 12:34 a.m. Then, and only for a minute, then from 12:35 to 12:55 a.m., then from 2:35 a.m. to 2:52 a.m., and from 3 o'clock a.m. to 3:04 a.m. Those were the times yesterday when we were reviewing it. And today we fast forwarded from 5:32 a.m. to 6:43 a.m. and from 6:44 to 6:45 a.m. And that's what I had recorded at the court's request, the times that we fast forwarded through the tape, the video of the defendant's statement.
Okay.
The other thing that we know that we're I intend to have our last witness here as the medical examiner. When we're done with that, the state will be making a motion to publish the state's evidence to the jury for their review. So we need to take up that issue about the notebook and the writings, and I didn't know if we want to do that now outside the presence of the jury, or get that done first and then come back to that.
It's my intention to go ahead and bring the jury in, let them hear from
Yes, sir.
the medical examiner, and then we'll take a break, perhaps a longer break, and we will address the State's Exhibit 14A at that point.
Yes, sir.
As well as any other logistics for the... All right. Anything else on behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
All right. If you'll bring in the jury, please. All right. I see all members of the jury are now present, and we're ready to proceed. Mr. Sachs, you may call your next witness.
You're going to stand and call Dr. Clay Nichols on the stand.
Sir, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks.
Honor. My apologies to the court for testifying my shirt sleeves. The jacket didn't make the flight.
We're just glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
May I?
You may.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to this jury, tell them who you are?
Clay Allen Nichols. I'm a forensic pathologist, and currently I'm a medical examiner in Oklahoma City.
And how long have you been a medical examiner in Oklahoma City?
1 year.
And prior to working in that capacity in Oklahoma City, where were you employed?
Prior to that, I was a medical examiner in Greenville County, and prior to that, I was a deputy chief medical examiner here in Wake County, and for the state of North Carolina.
Okay. And how long altogether have you been employed and working as a medical examiner?
30 years.
Would you briefly describe to this jury what a forensic pathologist and/or a medical examiner does?
Essentially, we're the officials that do the autopsies to determine the cause and manner of death. It involves both dissection and performing of laboratory duties as necessary, formulating a report and coming up with the cause and manner of death and signing the death certificates.
And what kind of training and education have you received which qualifies you to do that kind of work?
I received my Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Oklahoma in 1981. I received my MD degree from University of Oklahoma also in 1985. Following that, I entered a residency program in both forensic and anatomic pathology at the Medical University of South Carolina. That was a 5-year program. Following that, I was on the faculty at MUSC, plus I was the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Charleston County, South Carolina. I was in that capacity for 10 years. I then moved to Columbia, South Carolina, which is the state capital, Richland County, where I was the Chief Medical Examiner there. Following that, I was the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner up in Wake County and the state of North Carolina. I'm board certified by both the Anatomic Board of Pathology and both anatomic and forensic pathology. And I hold unrestricted licenses to practice in North Carolina and Oklahoma.
In connection with your duties and employment as a forensic pathologist, do you have an occasion to conduct the primary examination that a pathologist would do, which is an autopsy?
Oh, yes.
About how many autopsies have you performed?
Going on 9,000.
And have you had the occasion then to come to court at a later time and testify as an expert in the field of forensic pathology with respect to the results of those autopsies that you perform?
Yes, I have.
About how many times have you done that?
About 450 times over the 30 years.
And is that in multiple states as well?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time the state would tender Dr. Nichols as an expert in that field of forensic pathology.
Would you like to, excuse me, would you like to take him on voir dire or
No,
give any
Your Honor.
objections?
No objections.
All right. Members of the jury, again, an expert witness is permitted to testify in the form of an opinion in a field in which he or she purport to have special knowledge or skill. And in my discretion, I'm going to allow this witness to testify in the form of an opinion in the field of forensic pathology. And I'll just remind you that ultimately it's you, the members of the jury, that will determine what weight and what credibility you give to each and every witness, whether they're offered as an expert witness or as a lay witness or otherwise. Mr. Sachs, you may proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Nichols, did you have the occasion to become involved in the pathology examinations of both Jose Mendoza Flores and Maria Saravia back in January of 2013?
Yes.
Before we get there, would you explain to this jury, how do you go about to conduct an autopsy? What are you looking for and how do you do that?
Okay, an autopsy begins with a phone call that somebody has a person who's deceased and they need to know the cause of death. Following that, the body shows up to local morgue. An examination is begun with the clothes on, then with the clothes off, all the time looking for the presence or specifically pertinent absence of a process which may have caused the death. Following that, there is a complete dissection of the major organ systems, once again looking for the presence or absence of disease, specifically the cause of death. If necessary, tissues are taken at that time for microscopic examination and or toxicologic examination. When everything comes back, a report's generated and a cause and manner of death is rendered.
And is that the process that you followed in this particular case?
Yes.
And the process for each of these individuals, for both Jose and Maria?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about your qualifications that part of the duties of the medical examiner is to come up with a cause and a manner of death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you explain to this jury what you mean by the cause of death?
The cause of death is why the person died, be it a heart attack or gunshot wound or drug overdose, hanging, something in that regards. But it's actually the mechanism of how the person died.
And what then do you mean by manner of death?
Manner of death designates how the person died as far as a natural death, a suicide, a homicide, an accident, or undetermined.
Going back then to January of 2013, let's deal with Jose first, I guess. Did you conduct the autopsy on Jose Mendoza Flores?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
That was on January 7, 2013.
Okay. And when you received his body for that autopsy, what did you note about it?
There were multiple gunshot wounds.
Could you explain this story, first of all, just as a summary, how many gunshot wounds did you find on Jose?
16.
Can you list them out for us then and explain where each of these 16 gunshot wounds were?
Yes. Gunshot wound number 1, and excuse me, getting ahead of myself. They were given numbers for documentation purposes. The numbers don't indicate the sequence in which the wounds were inflicted. They're just the first one I found and on to second and third and so on. Gunshot number 1 is a distant perforating gunshot wound to the right neck.
Okay, so when you say a distant gunshot wound, what does that mean to you?
That means that the muzzle of the gun was far enough away from the victim that when the trigger was pulled, the only thing that struck the victim was the bullet. Any unburned gunpowder or soot, which would have been deposited on the skin in a closer wound or contact wound, had already dissipated.
And just, I know it can't be an exact thing because guns are all different,
Right.
but generally, how far do you have to get away from a person before it becomes distant for your purposes?
Once again, it depends on the gun and the type of ammunition used. Usually anything over 2 feet away is a distant shot.
All right, so you said the gunshot wound was right neck, correct?
Yes.
How about number 2?
Was a distant perforating gunshot wound to the left anterior neck.
Just on the other side?
That's correct.
All right. How about number 3?
Number 3 is to the right upper chest above the nipple.
Okay. How about number 4?
Number 4 is to the left chest at the nipple. Number 5 is to the left biceps. Number 6 is to the left lower chest. Number 7 is to the bottom of the left foot. Number 8 is to the right calf. Number 9 is to the right lateral forearm. Number 10 is located on the right lateral hip. Number 11 is a grazed gunshot wound to the left anterior front arm, upper arm.
Okay, now before we go further, since you added that adjective in there, what's the difference between the other gunshot wounds you've been talking about and this one when you say it was a grazed wound?
A grazed wound means that the bullet creased the skin but did not enter the body. So rather than having an entrance hole, it just left a mark across the skin.
Okay, I think we're on number 12.
Number 12, as a grazed entrance wound to the right mid-back. Number 13 is a distant perforating gunshot wound to the left lateral knee. Gunshot wound 14 is a distant penetrating wound to the back of the right thigh. 15, it's a minor skin split, once again consistent with the grazed wound. Gunshot wound 16 is located at the crease of the right groin.
One of the gunshot wounds you indicated entered the foot, I believe. Is
Yes.
that correct? I think that's going to be gunshot wound number 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did that enter the top or the bottom of that foot?
To the bottom of the left foot.
So we've seen some photograph. Have you ever been able to see the crime scene photographs of this particular case?
No, I don't think I have.
But we had photographs where Jose was situated where his feet were actually up on the couch. Would that help account for a bullet coming to the bottom of his foot?
Yeah, anything that would account for his foot to be elevated and have the foot of the bottom of the foot exposed.
from what you saw in your autopsy, did any of the bullets, like the one through the foot or the arms or anything else, did any of them enter into Jose, exit, and then re-enter him into another wound?
I don't think I noted any re-entrance wounds.
Okay. You indicated as part of the autopsy that, and I assume all of these wounds were seen on your external examination?
Yes.
I think you said the next thing you do is an internal examination and looking at dissection of major organs and such. Did you do that with Jose?
Yes, I did.
Was there anything significant found when you did your internal examination?
No, other than the multiple gunshot wounds.
Okay. When you did the internal examination of Jose, were you able to recover any of the bullets or projectiles that actually had hit him during these gunshots?
Yes. Let's see, 2 bullets, gunshot wound number 14, which was to the back of the right thigh, and that was recovered from the left femur. And,
Okay.
let's
Any
see,
others?
number 16, which started at the right groin, and that was recovered from the abdomen.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
You may.
23, 24.
So let me show you what's been previously introduced into evidence as State Exhibits 23 and 24. Do you see those red stickers with those on there?
Yes.
I don't know if you recognize those envelopes or not, but I think they've each been opened prior to your getting on the stand. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. If you would take out what's inside State Exhibit number 23, do you recognize what's inside?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a bullet.
And do you recognize where that bullet came from?
That bullet came from Jose Mendoza, as indicated by my evidence tag on the inside of the bag here. Over the bag opening is evidence tape and my initials, so this bag hasn't been opened. And there's a second bullet also from Jose Mendoza with the same tag and the same evidence tape.
And is that how you package these items to be sure that those items you recovered from his body are actually the same things you see here in court?
Yes.
Okay. Those 2 bullets that you see there, or projectiles, that State Exhibits 23 and 24, do they appear to be in the same condition as when you recovered them from the body of Jose Mendoza Flores back on January the 7th of 2013?
Yes.
You indicated there are 16 gunshots to Jose, but you only recovered 2 bullets. How about the other 14 gunshot wounds?
Those exited
Through and through then?
through and through. Also known as a perforating gunshot wound, and of course 1 or 2 were graze wounds, which by definition doesn't leave an entrance and exit.
I think you said the next step after doing your internal examination and autopsy is a potential microscopic examination of any kind of tissues or things of that nature. Was that done for Jose as well?
Yes, it was.
Again, anything significant that came as a result of the microscopic examination?
No, he was otherwise healthy.
And then I think the last thing you said was possible toxicology. Was that
Yes.
done for Jose as well?
Toxicology was saved. I don't think it was run because we do what was called a cause of death toxicology, which means that unless the death was suspected to be due to a toxicologic agent, toxicology is not performed, but the tissues are held.
And just so we don't confuse with some of the terms, when we're talking about toxicology.
Excuse me, ethanol was run
Okay.
and no ethanol was found.
Okay. But can you explain to her, what are we talking about with toxicology?
You're looking for substances which would have killed somebody, or such as ethanol would have been a significant impairment to the person.
Ethanol being alcohol?
That's correct.
All right. And toxicology, would that also include things like illegal drugs or poisons or things like that you're looking for?
Legal and illegal drugs, yes.
All right.
Heroin, cocaine,
Okay.
Oxycontin, yes.
Let's talk about Maria for a moment then. You said that you also conducted the autopsy on Maria, is that correct?
That's correct.
And when was that done?
Same day.
January the 7th of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. And when you received her body for examination, did you conduct that external examination?
Yes, I did.
And what did you find significant with respect to your work?
She had multiple gunshot wounds also.
Okay. And altogether, how many gunshot wounds did you find Maria suffered?
7.
Just as we did before with Jose, could you explain to the jury where each of these 7 shots were placed on Maria's body?
There was a distant perforating gunshot wound to the right back. There was a distant perforating gunshot wound to the left back. There was a distant penetrating gunshot wound to the left back. A distant perforating gunshot wound to the left buttock cheek. A distant perforating gunshot wound to the back of the right knee. A distant perforating gunshot wound to the palm of the right hand with exit from the back of the hand. A distant tangential or graze wound to the mid-pelvis. And associated minor trauma to the anterior wrist, which was not associated with the gunshot wound.
Just while we're there, what do you mean by that?
She had damage to her wrist due to perhaps a blow or a fall.
That had been when she fell down from the gunshot?
It could have been, or even before the gunshot, but it wasn't caused by a gunshot wound.
Okay. First of all, let's talk about the hand wound. You said that there was a wound that came into her right hand, is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you describe that wound to the jury?
Gunshot wound number 6 is to the palm of the right hand and encompasses the base of the thumb as well as the web of the thumb and forefinger. This measures roughly 1 inch in graze diameter. No soot or powder stippling is identified. The bullet then travels through the hand, exiting from the back of the hand at a distance of 4 inches from the tip of the middle finger. The exit wound is rather gaping, measuring 1.6 by 0.1 inch. The bullet exits and is not recovered.
So as I show here, does that mean on her right hand, the bullet's coming in on the palm side of her hand?
That's correct.
Coming out the back side?
That's correct.
Did you then conduct a internal examination on Maria as well?
Yes, I did.
Again, anything significant that caught your attention as a forensic pathologist?
No.
Okay. For her internal examination, were you able to recover any of these 7 bullets that struck her body?
I recovered only fragments.
Okay. Out of the 7 gunshot wounds that she suffered, how many were those through and through where it was an entry and an exit with no bullet even possibly being able to be recovered?
At least 6, and even the 7th where fragments were recovered, the core was exited.
Core of the bullet?
Yes.
So when these wounds are through and through, you said these wounds entered into, I heard at least 4, I think, entered into her back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does that mean they're then exiting out her front?
Yes.
Okay. When you compared and did your internal examination from the entrance wounds on the back to the exit wounds on the front of her, could you determine any kind of angle as to the way the shot was or the angle the bullet came in at the time that she received those wounds?
Essentially, they were going from back to front, as mentioned. But since the body can be in any position when those wounds were inflicted, I couldn't actually tell what angle she was at. She could have been laying on the floor, she could have been standing up, or somewhere in between.
But was the shot essentially going straight through?
Yes, essentially.
Okay. How about for Maria, when you then finished the internal examination, did you conduct the microscopic examination for her as well?
Yes, I did.
Again, anything of note that you thought was significant?
No.
Did she otherwise appear to be in good health besides these gunshot wounds?
Yes. And also, she was not pregnant.
Okay.
Okay.
And toxicology, was that done for Maria as well?
Yes, and no ethanol was detected.
Sir, based on your examinations of these two people, did you come to a conclusion, to a medical certainty as to the cause of death that each of these persons suffered?
Yes, I did.
Start with Jose. For Jose Mendoza Flores, what is your opinion as to his cause of death?
He died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds.
Out of those 16 gunshot wounds that he suffered, was there any one that would have just been fatal just in and of itself?
Yes.
Were there more than one that would have been fatal in and of themselves?
Yes.
How many, in your opinion, would have been fatal just if that one shot had been fired?
At least 5.
How about for Maria then? Did you come to any kind of opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to her cause of death?
Yeah, she also died of multiple gunshot wounds.
Okay. Same question. Out of the 7 gunshot wounds that we've talked about that Marie suffered, was there any one that would have been considered fatal in and of itself?
Yes.
Was there more than one?
Yes.
How many of the 7 would you have considered to be absolutely fatal, even if it was the only shot?
2 to 3.
When you conducted the internal examination, as part of that examination, do you look at the digestive system to see if there's any food present that they recently ingested?
Yes.
For Jose, were you able to find any food that he had recently ingested?
He had approximately 3 ounces of partially digested food.
And how about Maria?
Her stomach was empty.
Pursuant to your job as the medical examiner in this particular case, did you come to a conclusion as well and an opinion as to the manner of death that both Jose and Maria suffered?
Yes, both of them died as a result of a homicide.
And just, again, so we understand that terminology, medically, what do you mean that they died as a result of a homicide?
They died as a direct result of another individual's actions.
Okay. That would be opposite of accident or suicide, where it might be your own actions or undetermined or
Yes.
disease, I think you said, right? Natural.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't have anything further.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Good afternoon, Dr. Nichols.
Good afternoon.
It appears, although you say distant on some of the wounds, it appears that all the wounds in this case were considered distant
Yes,
on both individuals.
that's correct.
Okay. And on gunshot wound number 12 with for Mr. Flores Mendoza, you indicate graze entrance wound to the right mid-back, I believe.
Yes,
Is that, where would that be on his person?
approximately here. I'm sorry.
I can see it.
Yeah. Judge can see. There you go.
So was that an entrance and when you say graze?
A graze means it went across his back.
Okay.
There's no entrance, there's no exit. It went across, leaving a gutter-type injury.
Was that the only wound you noticed on his back side, as far as a potential entrance wound? Were all the other wounds to the front?
There were several exits, but the graze wound is the only, would be considered an entrance wound,
And that's the only wound he had on his back that was...
besides the exit wounds.
Beside the exit?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions.
Read it right.
Just because I don't want to confuse, I think you had said one of the gunshots wound came in the back of the right thigh. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's not the back.
The back, right, that's what I
Right.
make sure.
That was my understanding. You were talking about the back, not
I was.
from, yes.
Okay,
Okay,
but there was one that came into the back of his right thigh?
that's correct.
Anything else, Mr.
No,
Sykes?
same.
Mr. Cutler?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. You may step down. May he be excused? Any objections?
Yes. No.
Very well. Thank you, sir. You're free to go.
Always a pleasure, Your Honor. Thank you.
May I retrieve the exhibit?
Yes, you may. Do you have further live testimony or evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. Members of the jury, all the live evidence for the state has been offered at this point, and in earlier discussions, I believe the state is going to offer, or at least provide an opportunity to give or show you some of the exhibits, to do an evidence view is what we typically call it. That's going to take a few minutes for us to set up, because we have to get all the evidence out and set it out. Then I'll have a lot of instructions to give to you. So what I'm going to do is release you for a break and ask you to return. It's now 3:05. I'm going to ask you to return. It'll take a few minutes for us to do the things that we need to do to the jury room at 3:25. That's a 20-minute break. And we'll stay back here and get our things in order so that you'll be able to participate in this evidence view when we return. Remember not to talk about this case among yourselves or allow anybody to talk about it in your presence. Don't consult with or concern yourself with any media accounts, and don't conduct any independent research. I'm going to ask everyone to remain seated while the jury is excused until 3:25. Let the record reflect that all members of the jury have left the courtroom. Before we, I guess, discuss the logistics and setting up the jury view, do you all want to at this time talk about 14A?
It's as good time as any.
Okay, and this is based on our earlier discussion, the defendant's motion to suppress the jury from seeing 14A, so I'm going to turn off